Well, good morning, world, and welcome to Toronto virtually. And thank you so much, Joe, for that great introduction. I'm Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson, the chair of the City of Toronto's Economic and Community Development Committee. I'm pleased to be part of the 14th edition of the Toronto Global Forum and to be here with you today to help lead the second Toronto Partnership Symposium. Toronto has been a key sponsor of the forum since it began, and we're glad to help host these virtual sessions in Toronto. This morning's panel will explore global trade in a pandemic world. It will discuss how we can make the most of our existing international connections to foster innovation and trade. Establishing new international trade and investment relationships takes time, and it takes countless face-to-face interaction and, as Joe has indicated, lots of traveling. Given the current constraint that COVID-19 has forced on international travel, on personal contacts, how can we advance trade and investment opportunities during the pandemic? That's the big question. And how can we respond quickly in a rapidly changing international business landscape and a world trade order? The survival of business communities in all sectors depends on finding the right answers. Today's panels have much experience and knowledge to share with us on these issues. I want to welcome them, and I would like to now take the opportunity to introduce each of them. Our first panelist is Stephen Lund. For the past 5 years, Stephen has served as the CEO and Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Small Business at Opportunities New Brunswick. A proven leader in the economic development and investment promotion industry, he has 30 years of progressive leadership experience in private and public sector organizations, including 20 years at the CEO level in the foreign direct investment FDI sector in Atlantic Canada. He was recognized by Atlantic Business Magazine as one of the top 50 CEOs in Atlantic Canada 5 years in a row and was named one of the top 500 most influential people in financial centers worldwide. He's also a member of the Atlantic Business Magazine CEO Hall of Fame. Our next guest is Christina Nakamura. Is a Vice President of Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's Toronto's office. From 1976 to 2011, she served in various capacities within the Government of Canada in departments including Citizenship and Immigration Canada, the Department of Justice, the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. Christine has served overseas in Japan and Korea, and is a board member of the Japanese Canadian Cultural Centre Foundation in Toronto, Vice President of the Japan Earthquake Relief Fund, Board Director of Operations Smile Canada, and a member of the Advisory Council, Canada for the Prince Chidemiko Japan-Canada Memorial Fund. She also has worked closely with the City of Toronto and a number of our initiatives in China and Japan, and is an essential partner in our efforts to secure FDI from Asia. Jennifer Reynolds is the President and CEO of Toronto International Finance, TFI, is a public-private partnership with a mission to develop and promote Toronto's financial sector and to establish it as a leading global financial center. Jennifer's 20 years in the financial service industry includes senior roles in investment banking, venture capital, and global risk management. Prior to joining TFI, Jennifer was the president and CEO of Women in Capital Markets, Canada's largest industry association and advocacy group for women in the financial sector. In 2015 and 2017, she was named Women's Executive Network Canada's most powerful top 100 award winner. And our final speaker is Kyle Schultz. Kyle is the Executive Vice President of Business Development and Global Strategy for World Business Chicago. WBC is a private public nonprofit partnership that drives economic growth and job creation, supports business, and promotes Chicago as a leading global city. Kyle leads World Business Chicago's business development and global strategy efforts, establishing, creating partnership that drives economic collaboration between Chicago and its business partners. He has over 10 years of economic development leadership and experience. Chicago is one of Toronto's partner cities, and his perspective on his city and on sustaining market success to the United States is vital to the overall interests and the challenges that we are enduring through the current pandemic. Stephen, Christina, Jennifer, Kyle, thank you all for sharing your time and expertise with us today. And as we move forward to the question, I just want to remind everyone to mute their mics, and we are operating virtually. So a lot of interesting things happen with respect to technology, and I apologize for any interruption that we had earlier, but let's get on with this. There's so much for us to learn about how do we cope in this pandemic that is creating such universal challenges around the world. And so I've introduced my panelists, and I'm looking forward to their responses to the questions. So I will begin with the first question. The first question is, how can we make the most of our existing international connections to foster innovation and trade opportunities? And I'd like to turn first to Stephen, then Christina, and Jennifer, and then Kyle in that order. Stephen, good morning and welcome to Toronto.
Good morning. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And congratulations, Deputy Mayor, for being a great host. I was at the conference last year and it was terrific. And I know we're in a different world, but it looks like a great conference coming up. So I guess the first thing is to really identify our existing connections today. I think in Canada, we're blessed. We've got embassies and consulates around the world, trade commissioners. We have great partners at Toronto Global with Global Affairs, Investing Canada, provincial government, the city, and from a connections perspective, millions of Canadians around the world. And Canada has 14 trade agreements with 51 countries. We're the only G7 country that has a trade agreement with every other G7 country. So when I look at this question, we can almost break it down into three parts: pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID. I mean, we know this is a challenging time for everybody. We know at some point we're going to get through this. I don't know when it is. But when we do, I think Canada will be a beacon for investment around the world and for immigration. And I think Toronto is going to lead the way. Toronto will be one of the leaders in North America as we come out of this. I mean, we just have to look at where we were before the pandemic hit. And Deputy Mayor, you'll know these numbers as well as anybody. I mean, we were the fastest growing urban city in North America and the most diverse urban city in the world. We attracted over 100,000 new immigrants every year. We were one of the fastest growing technology clusters in North America, one of the strongest financial centers in North America. We've got lots of talent, which is what's driving economies these days. And you think about before COVID, we used to hop in a plane and knock on a door, open a door, seal a deal. Now that's gone. Zoom is like our close brother and sister, or it's like our pet dog that won't leave you alone. It's the world we live in, which means it's even more important now to maintain those relationships and to build on those. Get on the phone, get on Zoom, or whatever it happens to be. Build those relationships, reach out to expats, stay on top of the world. These are the things that we do today. They're going to drive our economies forward in the future. And connections are really what's going to drive the world forward. And so I think we're blessed where we are in Canada. We're blessed here in Toronto, and we're going to lead the way. Again, thank you so much. I look forward to listening to the panelists and some of the questions. So back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Christina. Christine.
Yes, thank you. And again, many thanks for inviting me to take part in this great panel. The pandemic has profoundly changed the way we work, study, and carry on our daily lives. And in terms of our trade and economic engagement with partners in international markets, most businesses have had to pivot to tech-enabled virtual engagement. While I do believe the value and impact of face-to-face interactions or engagement is not totally replaceable by the virtual format, especially in sealing deals and partnerships, the pivot became the means for us for survival during this pandemic period. A key aspect of achieving our Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada's mandate is to strengthen Canada-Asia relations through encouraging and deepening trade and investment ties with the Asia-Pacific region. The shift to virtual and digital means for engagement has meant a major culture shift in the way business is done in and with Asia. Having served as a diplomat for 17 years in Northeast Asia pre-pandemic, I would not have dreamed that relationship building and business transactions could be achieved successfully without person-to-person contact and interactions. But COVID-19 has forced us to find alternatives to person-to-person meetings, and now we know that it is not impossible. It may take longer and perhaps more effort, but success can be achieved through virtual meetings. We just have to work harder and be even more patient than before. Canada has an advantage, and Stephen already alluded to this, over many advanced economies. With 1 person out of 5 being born outside of Canada, we have a huge resource pool that links us to some of the more innovative and healthy economies around the world. Our diversity, as Prime Minister Trudeau once said, is Canada's strength. We are strong because of our differences. Toronto, one of the most multicultural and multiracial cities in the world, has the potential to keep current with new waves of innovation as they occur in economies that our diasporas are linked to around the globe. The region of our foundation's focus, the Asia Pacific, despite COVID-19, is faring reasonably well, economically speaking, and certainly better than some other regions of the world. And as we know, the region is a major global hub of innovation. So much so that, as we know, some of Asia's top IT platforms are being targeted by our friends to the south. By working to sustain our relationships with the region, the ones that we already have, through our diaspora and through our excellence, Canada has the potential to keep a finger on the pulse of new waves of innovation, which complement Canada's growing sectors, some of those that are here in Toronto, such as AI, biomedical and healthcare, agri-food and clean tech, which will facilitate our quest for continued economic prosperity into the future moving forward. So I think that these are some things that we have to really focus on and continue to exert efforts to ensure that post-pandemic we're going to remain healthy. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christine. And we now ask Jennifer to speak. Jennifer?
Well, I think I can't stress enough how important it is that we actually continue to be out there. Obviously, we can't be in person in many of these, in my case, international financial centers, but I really think that we need to continue, people in all of our roles, we need to continue to foster the relationships and develop relationships with our international connections. I think, to put our pens down, so to speak, and wait for the pandemic to be over would be a very, very big mistake. So I think a lot of progress can be made. And it's interesting because, I just said to someone the other day, October is always a very, very busy time for me personally. It just seems to be, we have a lot of international events in the financial services sector. And this October has been no different than any other October. It's been different in that it's all virtual, of course, but it's busy. It's been very, very busy. We've continued with international conferences. We've been speaking. We've been out there talking about the opportunities in Canada in the financial services sector and in Toronto specifically. That activity, I sit on the boards of 2 international networks. One is a UN-convened Financial Centers for Sustainability, FC4S as it's called. That has been very active. 33 financial services or financial centers around the world have been very focused on continuing to, even as we try to come out and we recover from the pandemic, to focus on sustainability and sustainable growth. And so that network has been very, very active. We're in the midst of our AGM there. And we also are in the midst of another AGM with the World Association of International Financial Centers, another international international networks. So the work continues. We have reports coming out from those two networks specifically. There is a strong recognition in the financial services sector that we're very interconnected. People often think that we're competing with these different financial services sectors or centers. And in fact, we're just so interconnected. And so work continues today and will continue going forward. So, that makes me feel, very positive about the outlook in terms of when we come out of this, that we won't lose ground and that those relationships are very, very strong. I think, as well, as we think about the businesses that are going to succeed in the future. Clearly, innovation is going to be critical. I think we're thinking in all financial services sectors very differently about how we do business and the importance. Digitalization, of course, has increased at a pace we couldn't ever have imagined. And that will really propel us going forward. I think those financial centers who will be the most competitive will be the ones who can compete from an innovation perspective. And I think that Toronto is very, very well situated on that front. We have not only a incredibly successful financial services sector, but an incredibly successful technology sector. So I think those things actually position us very, very well for coming out of this strongly. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jennifer. And Kyle, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. I will first off start by saying, if you hear background noise, you are catching what a 17-month-old on her way to daycare sounds like. So for those of you who have parents, please bear with me as our Monday morning kind of gets settled into our routine. Chicago is incredibly fortunate that we have 29 sister cities around the world and 6 direct bilateral memorandums of understanding with cities and countries around the world as well. So coming into this pandemic, we were well positioned to build on our existing international relationships and try to make the most of them when we thought we could travel and when we thought we could host international delegations. The pandemic, I think, proved one thing that Jennifer talked about, was that there's a digital transformation happening. And so our realization here is that this crisis, this ongoing health crisis that we all continue to deal with, isn't an American or Canadian or even French or German. This is a global challenge that we're all dealing with. And all of our partners, whether it be businesses, stakeholders, innovation hubs around the world, are trying to figure out how to maximize this time where they're not able to travel, they're not able to hop on a plane and go meet with someone in person. And what we've seen over the last 7 months has been that there's an opportunity to educate both our businesses, our stakeholders, and civic leaders on why international trade and investment are crucial parts of our economy. We have instituted several webinars, discussions between Chicago and our sister cities or our economic partners around the world. And one of the things that's been very interesting is we track the attendance. We get participants from Arkansas, New Jersey, other parts of the world who I think want to know what's happening in these markets and understand for themselves what is happening on those industries. So this really presents an opportunity for us to make stronger connections, explore opportunities that maybe in the past had not been cost effective, and build these relationships so that when we are able to return to a normal working world where we are able to travel and host and meet in person, that we haven't lost the time, we haven't been idle, but rather we've been able to be innovative and meet this moment. So for us, this has been a exciting opportunity, a silver lining to use these technologies and the fact that we all know how to access a Zoom video call or a Blue Jeans conference to come together and bring our businesses to share our stories around innovation and digital transformation. So thank you.
Establishing new international trade and investment relationships take time and as well personal contacts. Given the pandemic, the impact of COVID has had on international traveling, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I think we'd like to explore this a little bit further. How can we advance trade and investment opportunities during this pandemic time? And I'll start with Christine.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Certainly, I think that establishing new relationships across the Pacific or Atlantic is certainly trickier than sustaining relationships that were already developed previously. and especially without the face-to-face interactions that in the past we thought were so crucial to building trust with potential partners, etc. But, I'm going to throw in a little funny comment here is that, before the pandemic, and certainly with the lockdown post when the pandemic started, with restrictions on group meetings outside of one's usual bubble, dating app users have exponentially increased. So if it works for social networking, it must be possible to make it work for business connections as well. Using platforms, as everybody who's spoken so far has mentioned, through webinars and whatnot, we've been able to promote business opportunities, and it does work. It takes longer, more effort to prepare maybe the information to market one's business or one's interests in that destination market, but with the help of, let's say, sector experts in country to facilitate business introductions or B2B matchings, trust can be built with potential business partners. In the Asia-Pacific region, which is the focus of our foundation's work, there are barriers such as language, culture, and different value systems. But with the support of in-country experts, you can overcome most of these barriers. And the savings that your business can make through not traveling to do the face-to-face can be invested in getting good experts to assist in your business expansion efforts. In 2019, to encourage and facilitate women entrepreneurs to scale businesses by engaging the growth markets in Asia, I led a 36-member women's delegation of SMEs and thought leaders to Japan. Our 17 women entrepreneurs signed 8 deals in a matter of 2 months after our mission, which is an unprecedented achievement in my view, because through my experience, I have always told people never to expect anything to happen overnight with Japan. It takes years of relationship building before you can come to a deal. But they proved me wrong. Maybe the entrepreneurs were great caliber of entrepreneurs quality, and so they were very successful. So the success of that mission led me to organize a second women-only trade mission to South Korea, which was scheduled to take place in February of 2020, but the pandemic put a damper on it, and we've had to postpone it. And by early spring, it was evident that COVID-19 wasn't going away anytime soon. And so because it was clear that women SMEs were disproportionately being affected by the pandemic, we decided to pivot to a virtual model of a trade mission. Women coping with managing remote work, home life, including homeschooling for children, not to mention loss of revenue due to lockdown, was taking its toll on many of them. So this virtual model, well, I still believe that face-to-face in-market trade missions are more effective. I think that we can still achieve the business deals through this virtual format for our delegates. We've contracted in-market agents focused on the sectors represented by our women entrepreneurs to promote and recruit companies with complementarities of our women entrepreneurs and their businesses. And additionally, we are taking advantage of the government resources that I believe Stephen mentioned earlier to facilitate market access, such as the Trade Commissioner Service from Global Affairs Canada, in-country Canadian chambers, as well as the destination government ministries that can provide assistance to heighten the level of success in your B2B matching. We've partnered with many organizations with similar objectives as ours, and I think that our mission, which is scheduled for 3rd to 4th of November, and looking at our B2B schedule, it's going to be a very successful mission. So the virtual model offers definitely an alternative to in-market missions. Given the responses so far that we've received from Korean companies interested in our women entrepreneurs, I'm really hopeful that deals will be signed this time around as well. So back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christine. And we're going to move now to Jennifer. Then after we'll have Kyle and then Stephen. So Jennifer, you're up.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to echo many of Christine's comments, actually. This concept of a virtual trade mission is something that we're exploring as well. We have actually three that are in the planning stages right now, one for Singapore, one for Dubai, and one for Tokyo. And therefore, fintech companies, Canadian fintech companies that are looking to expand their businesses internationally. We did this last year in person. Just to give one example, we were at the Singapore FinTech Festival last year in person with 6 Canadian fintechs. And it was a very successful mission, and we're going to do it virtually this year. And we actually also have the opportunity to do a profile of Toronto at this particular conference. So, and we're not the only ones doing it, quite frankly. We had London mission come in from London virtually about a month ago of fintechs looking to do business here in Canada. So this is the new normal. I think we just all have to continue doing business this way for now. And I think certainly, I've talked to various companies who, were in the midst of going international with their business and as COVID hit, and many of them paused and said, should we be doing this really right now? And went ahead and have been successful. So, there's companies out there who are proving you can actually expand your business internationally during these times. Clearly for businesses, fintech businesses, technology businesses, much easier where you can actually do it and you don't need necessarily, bricks and mortar, so to speak, in those markets. But I think that's certainly what we need to be doing right now. And, I think as I spoke about earlier, because we do have such a strong technology sector here in the region, I think that should give us an advantage in many respects to continue to expand into international markets. So, and I think from my perspective too, I think it's so important for us to continue to do this because, obviously I spend my time out in international markets, promoting the Toronto Financial Centre, promoting the Canadian financial services sector. And this needs to continue. We need to, keep our footprint out there. And so I think participating in these missions and in different conferences, as I spoke about earlier, really is so important to for us to continue to attract not just business, but talent. Immigration is clearly a part of our economic strategy here in Canada and certainly in Toronto. And I think it's so important for us to be present in different markets and to be telling our story. I think we have a great story. I think, as you look around the world and just in terms of, political stability and the way we welcome immigrants here to Canada, I think that's a great story. And I think we have to continue to get out there and be present in these markets and in the capacity we can be present in today, which of course is virtual. So that's certainly what we're going to be doing at TFI.
Great. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Kyle?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. I think one of our big goals heading into 2020 was the establishment of a new international relationship with on the European continent. And that all got thrown aside when COVID, shelter in place, and all those rules came into effect. And instead of kind of waiting to figure out what the world would be, to echo what Christine and Jennifer have said, it's forging ahead and using these technologies, these existing relationships that we have to help maximize our business opportunity. One of the things that's been, I think, reassuring, not just from being part of Chicago and our recovery efforts, but hearing from our other international stakeholders, is that every municipality, government, economy is trying to bring business and trying to help their small, medium, large companies grow as part of its economic vitality. And so that if you do focus on, as Christine said, those sector specialists in markets that you're looking to grow with, or having a very kind of specific industry you're looking to target, it allows you to kind of build those relationships internationally quicker. I think one thing that we've been very conscious of over the last 4 or 5 months is just video conference fatigue, and that there are so many offers to be part of a video conference. There are so many webinars and discussions. And so if you're trying to have a good, meaningful conversation that helps build new international relationships that will drive and facilitate trade and investment, our approach has been to keep it very tight and have our industry leaders help tell the story about why Chicago and help create an interest in Chicago. World Business Chicago is, an inbound foreign direct investment attraction organization. And so this pivoting to trade as a mutual benefit to each ourselves as well as our international partners has been somewhat of a new experience. But we found that if we can leverage businesses that are thriving in Chicago, that are innovating in some capacity, we've been really able to kind of replace the missed opportunities we'd have would there have been international travel this year and create new relationships that are benefiting everyone. We've had a couple Chicago companies that have been able to explore more about supply chain with parts of the world that they were unfamiliar with, both in Europe and in Asia this year, which has been a kind of nice testament that these webinars are able to produce deals, as Christine said. I mean, her numbers were just incredible for her programs. And the more we can be committed and concentrated in this capacity, I think the better off we'll be coming out of that. And we can really, again, as I said in my first statement, this is an international issue we're all facing with. So everyone knows how to use a virtual tool in some capacity. And if we make it meaningful and focus on what our businesses actually need, I think the outcomes will speak for themselves. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Kyle. And Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I think I can use two words that could summarize it all up. Stay aggressive in these times. I mean, investments will drive economies in the future. We need to connect with our partners, our consulates, connect with our partners, share stories, virtual trade missions, promote Canada. I mean, we know that Canada and Carl, US as well, but we need to get out there internationally at some respect. I mean, I've been into over 40 countries around the world, and Canada has a great reputation, but not everybody knows why. And so now's the time to do that. I want to give a specific example of a great initiative that I think will showcase some of the things we need to do today. And that is, we need to be ready for when we get out of this pandemic. It's critical. Jurisdictions that prepare today are going to be successful tomorrow. The Toronto Region Board of Trade stepped up with partners in government, business. Toronto Global was a partner. They developed a playbook called Shaping Our Future. It's a playbook for rebooting and reimagining the Toronto region. To quote, transform the innovation corridor into a high-growth, integrated economic zone that attracts top talent and investment. This innovation corridor stretches from Guelph, Hamilton, Waterloo, and across Toronto. It represents 8 million people, 3.2 million jobs. In the first 3 months, this corridor, we lost 600,000 jobs. So what we do today is going to impact what we do tomorrow. This represents, just this little region represents 20% of our population in Canada, 25% of our GDP. So within this initiative, they're going to look at things like a regional economic strategy for recovery, broadband, transportation, housing, government procurement, social determinants of health, a new deal for centers. We've all been impacted by this, including municipalities, individuals, businesses, all levels of government. It's so critical now that what we do today to prepare for tomorrow is going to set us apart from other jurisdictions around the world. So being aggressive today is going to be so critical for all of us. And I wanted to point out that specific example because being ready for when we get out of this is going to be critical so we can hit the ground running, get back to where we were pre-pandemic, and drive this economy and get people back to work, get our economy humming again. Again, there's so much we can do today. So I'm excited to be part of it. I think there's a great opportunity. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We're moving on to our final question. Question number 3, please provide your perspective on how to mitigate COVID-19's economic damage to people, companies, and of course, countries and communities, of course. And give us your view on what international supply chains might look like in a post-COVID world. And I know that, Kyle, you touched on it. This is an opportunity for everyone to perhaps dive in a little bit deeper into this subject matter because it's extremely important amongst all the other things that we have heard this morning. So I will ask our Jennifer to address this first, and then Kyle. and Stephen, and then finally Christine. So over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The first thing I would say that I think is going to be so important is continued coordination and good collaboration between the public and the private sector. I think we have seen that in many instances as we've gone through this pandemic in Canada, and I think we really need to see that continue. And in the case of financial services, there was ways of doing business that didn't work as we transitioned into this virtual world. The financial services sector was very involved in disseminating and getting out some of the aid to small business and individuals. And so that collaboration it worked very well. So I think we need that to continue going forward. Everyone needs to be sort of rowing in the same direction, so to speak. So I think the other thing I would say is clearly we've seen certain sectors and certain parts of the economy are going to need more help than others as we come out of this. Of course, small business it has been very hurt. The service sector generally, sectors like the hospitality industry, they're going to need support for quite some time. And so we are going to have to really make sure that we don't sort of forget about them too quickly. It's going to be a long road ahead. And so I think very targeted support for these sectors is going to be critical. As we know, small business underpins our economy. 98% of our businesses in Canada are small and medium-sized businesses. And so we need to make sure that they come through this. And I think the other thing that we really need to think about as well is, something that's near and dear to my heart. I've spent a lot of time in my career working on this. Is women in the economy have obviously been very hard hit. They're in a lot of the sectors that I just mentioned, and we're going to need to make sure that we don't sort of fall back from that perspective. We need to make sure that gap, that economic gap between men and women, isn't hurt more disproportionately as we come out of this. So I really think it's we're going to have a very targeted effort between government and the private sector to make sure that it's sort of a just recovery for everyone. Because I think certainly those of us who are fortunate, who are in the corporate world and are able to continue our work from our homes, there's a lot out there who aren't as lucky as us. So I really think we need to be thinking broadly about all parts of the economy as we come through this. In terms of our trade relationships and supply chains going forward, I think there's no doubt that we're going to be thinking certainly about diversifying those as we move forward. I think that making sure that we, as we've talked about through this whole session, that we make sure we have strong relationships internationally. I mean, Canada is a trading nation, so it's absolutely critical for us to maintain our trade relations going forward and our supply network. So I think, we're going to see a focus on diversification and I think certainly on making sure that we have strong relationships with our partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Kyle?
Thank you, sir. I would just like to start off by really echoing what Jennifer said, that to get through this, the alignment of the public and private sector, to be in coordination, providing up-to-date insights, making sure the information we're exchanging is relevant and beneficial. Chicago was very fortunate that earlier this year, we convened a group of regional stakeholders to come up with our Recovery Task Force Advisory Report that laid out 17 recommendations, not how to just address the economic impacts of COVID, but also for Chicago and the United States, the racial inequalities that George Floyd's murder had really put a spotlight on. And these recommendations covered everything from youth services, healthcare, workforce, industry, and many more. But one of the big things that kind of has come across as we've dug into implementing this Recovery Task Force report, especially for our small and medium-sized businesses, is the digital transformation. And I know that each of the panelists, we've talked about this today, but really you can see the recovery starting to take shape now with those that have been able to implement an effective digital strategy, whether shifting from a purely brick and mortar to more of an e-commerce base, or from our restaurant industries, being able to find resources to have wheels to bring food to your home. The digital transformation has been a key cornerstone for what we've been able to do. And I'm very fortunate that I get to work with an incredible team, both at World Business Chicago and the city of Chicago, where we're able, as World Business Chicago and a team that looks to attract new investment, to leverage the best innovations that are happening in Europe or in Asia or in Toronto and help see if we can't create a partnership with our businesses. I'm fortunate that through Chicago's sister city, Toronto, we were able to work with Ritual Restaurant Services to see if there was an opportunity to leverage them for our restaurant industry to help in these trying times. So I think it's a coordination, as Jennifer said, of bringing the best innovations and the best technology that'll help our small and mid-sized companies that make up the backbone of our economy get through this. The supply chain conversation's been incredibly interesting. I think part of it is educating. Early on, in the earliest days of this COVID crisis, before we really knew what it was, my earliest memory was listening to a markets report talking about how Apple was adjusting its first quarter forecast because of the shock to the supply chain in China. So I think that story and how initially shocked supply chains were with China kind of shutting down has made businesses reevaluate or want to understand. And so again, taking the time to help our industry get educated on where are the best supply chains, what countries have certain strengths, certain materials, certain disciplines that will help their business, where are other industries kind of moving to. If they're not staying in China, are they moving to Taiwan and Vietnam? And so that for us is to continually work with our international partners to help them promote their economy, help educate our businesses on where the most cost-effective, reliable place to do business is, because the international supply chain was shocked in the earliest days of this, and as it kind of settles, there's an opportunity for us to really help shape who we work with, why those partners are a really good fit. So, yeah. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Kyle. And Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. We talk about minimizing economic damage. There really is no silver bullet. A lot of people are suffering. I moved back to Toronto after being away for quite a while, and it's a different world. I go down to the Path, which is the biggest shopping center underground in the world. And it's a ghost town. Small businesses, women in business, as Jennifer mentioned, are being impacted. And so it's so critical for us, again, to do what we can today to set the stage for this economic recovery. And I want to pick up on what Carl said on digitizing businesses. It's just so critical. We're seeing such a shift in businesses today. Going online is going to be so critical to success. In terms of supply chain, we already are seeing it around the world today. Connecting local companies to international opportunities, looking for opportunities. Companies around the world are reevaluating their supply chains. We think Toronto and Canada are uniquely positioned to capitalize on this. We're seeing it today. We look at some of the recent announcements. Ford announcing producing electric vehicles here in Oakville, and that implications for the supply chain are tremendous. We're looking at distilleries now producing hand sanitizers, manufacturing companies, PPE. I think what we're seeing around the world today is a shift in how we do business, a shift to some companies and some countries bringing things back. We're seeing global supply chains shifting. We need to position our countries, our regions, to capitalize on these opportunities, because I think there will be opportunities. Canada is a safe, reliable place. Talent's going to drive economies forward. There are going to be opportunities. And I can't stress enough that we work with our businesses, that we stay aggressive, and we position ourselves as a great place to be for investment. So thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. As we fast closing on 9:30, we are now going to ask Christine to comment.
Thank you very much. I can't add too much more than what has already been said, but certainly I think in terms of the international supply chains, I think what COVID-19 has taught us an important lesson that we have to really consider trade diversification even more so to ensure that we can weather the future crises should they come forward. I think that in at the beginning of the pandemic, certainly we were looking inward, but Canada's economy is too small, and Canada as a country, as a nation, is far too small to do anything alone. And so turning inward is not the answer, certainly a combination, and to have production capability within Canada is important, but I think that for Canada's future economic prosperity, continuing going forward, it's absolutely important that we continue to make efforts in the diversification, in our diversification efforts. And again, as Jennifer mentioned, I think that going forward, the SMEs are really key because they are the backbone of Canada's economy. So whatever we can do through private partnerships or what have you, to help the SMEs get back on their feet is critical to rebooting the economy post-pandemic. And so our group, my foundation, is going to work continuously over the next 3 years to facilitate women in tech and innovation, trade missions to other parts of Asia. South Korea is the first one because we have a bilateral with Korea, the only one we have in Asia. But we are going to other parts of the Asia-Pacific region in order to help women in business, women SMEs scale and scale their businesses through accessing the healthy economies in the Asian market. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. This panel group has provided us with so much information that is timely, it's insightful, it's helpful for those who are watching and to learn from. I think, Jennifer, you described it, you used the term the new normal, and you're absolutely right. I think Kyle, you mentioned, and Stephen and Christine, you talk a little bit about the collaboration and the need for us to, enhance this relationship with respect to the public and private sector. It is so timely, obviously, and obviously the utilization of technology and how that has helped us. And of course, very happy that we are already making a tremendous amount of headways into this digital economy and the use of technology to help. Clearly, the pandemic has changed and has altered dramatically the way that we have done business, the way that business has been done. But what is really helpful and enlightening is the fact that we've all been able to pivot, to respond to this pandemic. And I believe that, Kyle, you mentioned that, and it's obvious that it's hitting all around the world. And Christine, you talked a little bit about the relationship in Japan and some of the opportunities in terms of the women that you've traveled with and so on and doing business. Clearly, we have to take a very positive approach in terms of how we address the response to business and how we address the issues around the inequities that has been facing many different groups and organizations, the gaps that have basically been highlighted by COVID. And we have to respond. And I'm really delighted that the panelists today have been so informed and been able to help us to understand what are the pathways to addressing some of the challenges that we see and that we have been facing. And so, Jennifer talked about the fintech sector and talking about, business and talent, some of the things that we have been focusing on here. I have no doubt with respect to Chicago, which has been a sister city with Toronto for quite some time. And I'm so delighted that we're able to have this opportunity to engage. And we have been sister cities for some time. And so it's not a new relationship that we have to start. It is something that we've had in place for a long time. And Stephen, your insight and your knowledge in this, the world of FDIs has just been so phenomenal. And it's really helpful that the wealth of information that you're all bringing forward, as well as recognizing that there's so many elements that we have to address. And I think it's important that it's been mentioned that we have to coordinate and collaborate together in order to really help focus the attention, helping the small, medium-sized enterprises, which consist of the bulk of our business economy here in Canada and certainly in the city of Toronto. And so I'm so delighted that we've had this tremendous panel who have a tremendous wealth of information and have provided so much insight to us today that I know that will help going forward. So Jennifer Reynolds from the Toronto Financial International, TFI, Kyle Scholes, World Business Chicago, Stephen Lund, Toronto Global, Christine Nakamura, Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. I want to thank you all very much, and to really appreciate and thank you for joining us today. And Kyle, your young 17-month-old, please do extend a great thanks to your child on behalf of all of us here in Toronto that you were able to join as we talk about the new normal, how we work from home, and whether or not it's family members or our pets and so on that are all part of this process. And I think it's really healthy for us to use that as a baseline in terms of the work that we're embarking on and the engagement and what is important, family, what is important, our communities and so on. And so what we do for them is indicative as to how we grow and how we develop in the future. So I want to thank you all very much for joining today's discussion. It's been a really important discussion. It's been fairly insightful. It's been a lot of information, knowledge coming forward from these four amazing panelists who've joined us here today as part of the Toronto Partnership Symposium. And I'm really delighted. So I want to remind everyone, though, that this great city of Toronto, all the great cities around the world, are working hard to get through the pandemic. And we can only do this by collaborating and working together. So the City of Toronto invites all of you to continue sharing your thoughts and your ideas directly, certainly with our economic development staff and with our regional associates at Toronto Global. I want to thank my staff team at EDC. I wanted to thank the Global Forum and everyone for making this event possible. I wish you good health and safety. Thank you all very much and continued success. All the best now. Thank you.